F-16 fighters for Ukrainian military pilots. Russia is preparing for this no less than the Ukrainians themselves. Advanced Russian fighters are being equipped with long-range missiles, which the Kremlin believes will help gain an advantage over Western aircraft.
Well, the missile is quite effective. Let's say we have suffered losses from this missile.
However, will it be enough to fight not against Soviet aviation, but against NATO aircraft? With a completely different configuration and technical characteristics, the F-16, according to analysts, will not only be able to dodge Russian missiles, but also respond with much more effective weaponry. F-16 versus Russian fighters. Which of them has more effective weaponry? Whose missiles fly farther and more accurately? And who will win in an aerial duel? This video has caused quite a stir online. For the first time, the latest Russian fighter Su-30SM-2 has been upgraded by the Russian Federation to use long-range aviation missiles.
Missiles 37, long-range missiles with a range of 300 kilometers. Previously, they carried two types. Here is the standard armament. This is the MiG-31BM. It carried 4 such missiles. And as sort of alternative additional armament, the main Russian Air Force fighters, Su-35S, carried them.
With hundreds of these aircraft, the question arose, why modify fighters for such missiles when there are only a few dozen of them? According to experts, this is how the notorious confrontation between Russia and NATO armaments began.
But this indicates that the Russian air forces are preparing to meet the F-16.
So how do the Russians plan to meet Western fighters in the Ukrainian sky? The long-range aviation missile R-37M has been involved in this war since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and, according to its specifications, is considered one of the longest range in the world. The maximum launch range is up to 300 kilometers, with a flight speed of 6 Mach or more, than 7,000 kilometers per hour. With a total weight of 600 kilograms, its warhead weighs 60. The missile is guided and has a homing head. According to analysts, the Russians currently have about 1,500 of these units.
And the homing heads for these missiles are produced by the Ryazan radio plant. By the way, many others too, right? Well, this plant is within the range of almost all types of our strike drones. So therefore, if we really want to, we can somewhat influence the production rate of these missiles.
However, in their efforts to promote their military-industrial complex, the Russians, as always, overdid it. The invincible duo, the latest fighters with one of the longest range missiles in the world, turned out to be one-off models with highly exaggerated specifications.
Since around the year 21 to 22, the Russians have established serial production of the new Su-30SM fighter model. This is the Su-30SM-2 model, and they added to the Su-30SM-2 these long-range R-37 main missiles with a range of up to 300 kilometers were included in the armament, although the range is clearly exaggerated. And Ukrainian sources from the Air Force say that the maximum recorded range was about 177 kilometers.
As for the advanced aircraft, their number is extremely limited.
They are in small numbers. There are 19 machines in the Russian Aerospace Forces and 8 such aircraft in naval aviation.
Now, regarding the range, Russian fighters are equipped with radars theoretically capable of seeing targets at a distance of 350 kilometers and missiles supposedly flying 300 kilometers. However, the realities of war differ drastically from test conditions.
And our aircraft usually operate at low altitudes, where the effectiveness of the R-37 missiles decreases. Simply put, the capabilities of the onboard systems of MiG-31 and Su-35 aircraft do not allow for controlling these missiles at long distances against the backdrop of the ground.
However, the desire to still reach our pilots from a long distance has not disappeared. Additional equipment was deployed, of which ended in another failure for Russian aviation.
The Russians tried to use A-50 flying radars for this purpose. But as is known, they are no longer in vogue. Now they are resting. After 2 such aircraft were shot down and the rest appear very rarely.
But can the F-16 fighters respond to the Russians in any way? Experts assure that they can, despite the fact that on paper, the long-range race is completely lost. Against 300-kilometer missiles, it will be necessary to fight with weapons that have a range of 160.
The F-16 doesn't have long-range missiles, but it does have medium-range missiles, which are called AMRAAM. So if we get these AMRAAM missiles with a range of 160 kilometers or 150 kilometers, right, then their capabilities, the F-16s, will be comparable to the capabilities of Russian fighters equipped with long-range missiles.
The question arises, how? However, it's quite simple. By primarily operating at low altitudes, Ukrainian pilots even today do not allow themselves to be detected at long distances. In fact, air combat typically begins at an average distance of about 150 kilometers, where the range is sufficient for both types of missiles, and other characteristics become a priority.
The AMRAAM missile is much more maneuverable and much more effective at hitting targets than the large, less maneuverable R-37 missile. That is, the F-16 can simply evade this missile with an energetic maneuver at low altitude. However, Russian aircraft, which typically fly at medium and high altitudes, will not be able to evade the AMRAAM missile.
Besides maneuverability, the F-16 outperforms the Russian Su in terms of defensive systems and radar stealth.
It has an exceptionally small radar cross-section, so it will be extremely difficult to detect at short ranges. It is a highly maneuverable aircraft, and I am really counting on it being equipped with a modern, advanced, effective onboard defense system that will jam and disrupt the guidance of Russian guided missiles.
As a result, with the proper use of the F-16, an aerial battle might not even occur at all.
If the use of the F-16s continues at low altitude against the backdrop of the ground, then it might turn out that if they also receive long-range missiles along with the aircraft, they could potentially shoot down the Russian R-37 missile carriers before those can detect, lock onto the target, and launch their missiles at the F-16s.
However, for now at the moment, this remains just a forecast. In reality, there hasn't been a confrontation between NATO aviation and modern Russian aircraft, nor between their weaponry, so Ukraine will obviously become the first place for this historic battle, in which our chances of success are quite high.
It will be necessary to properly develop the correct tactical methods for using the F-16 aircraft. Then it will be possible to arrange a beating of the Russian aviation.
And who do you think will prevail in the upcoming aerial duels? Be sure to write in the comments below this video, and also don't forget to like it and subscribe to our channel, so you don't miss new episodes of Arsenal.